where I would go and visit a friend's house, and they did the exact same degree as me. It's like, why is my friend so much more successful than me? Wow, even then, it's like he has those things, and like how? Like I was just trying to like balancing it out, but it's like it didn't make sense, and I was very egotistical, and I was envious, and those types of things just they don't help foster a good relationship. It just kind of pushes you away. I was trying to see whether I could help this guy, and this guy had extremely audacious goals. He said that he was he wanted to be one of the best salesmen in the world. He wanted to help sell over $1 billion, like a billion with a B, of this product. And I was like, wow, like that's a crazy audacious goal. And I was trying to find out like what was like the core motivation for getting it. You just want like the status, like what is it? And he's like, no, well, I want to have a level of certainty that my family will always be cared for. There came a moment for him where he realized, well, if he wanted to walk his daughter down the aisle one day, that he was going to have to make some massive changes.
Welcome to the Too Dad to Quit podcast.
The podcast where we highlight stories of dads on the other side of divorce.
To inspire and give strength to dads going through it.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Yoel.
Welcome to the Too Dad to Quit podcast. You can find us on twodadtoquit.com, Too Dad to Quit on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and anywhere else podcasts can be found. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, reach out to us. We want to hear your story, share your story. We think everyone has a story that will impact others in ways you couldn't even imagine. And please don't forget to rate the podcast. This will help get the podcast out to as many people as possible. This week, we are sitting down with Kyle West. Kyle is from a town in South Africa I am not even going to attempt to pronounce. Kyle is the father to two awesome kids, a 5-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. Professionally, Kyle is an embedded electronics engineer, meaning that he loves to build electronic systems from the inside out, typically doing software development for microprocessors and things we most likely will never see. After the collapse of his marriage and the slow motion legal system, he decided to help other dads out there, and specifically dads who have to face the process of separation or divorce. Kyle also loves reading, spending time outdoors, hiking, being fit, seeing nature, and visiting the Kruger National Park. Kyle has also started Heroic Dad Coaching. His mission is to help dads out there live fully and lead a life with confident authenticity, proudly growing a heroic future generation of world changers. The best thing they can do for their kids, getting themselves right and 110% committed to being the best for their children. So Kyle, thank you for coming on and reaching out. It's a pleasure to have you. And with a mission like that, seemed to me like a perfect fit. But I want to get back to South Africa. And how do you pronounce this town you live in?
I'm in Amanzimtoti, so the it means the water is sweet. Amanzimtoti. It's in a city called Durban, so it's a little coastal beach town. Amanzimtoti.
Wow! And is that where you grew up?
Grew up in Durban and a little bit in Cape Town, but my last 10-15 years has been in Amanzimtoti.
Wow! And are you a surfer? Because it's on my dream list of things to do. And I know South Africans, there's a huge surfing community.
Well, the water is warm. It's not that cold. I'm not a surfer personally, but yeah, definitely the beach is littered with bodyboarders and guys surfing. It's there's a big community down here.
Yeah, I actually have on my dream list that I watch a lot of vloggers, and there's in Cape Town, apparently up on the mountain that I can't think of right now. There's actually a beach up there that it's on my list of places to eventually one day see. Are you aware? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Certainly. Well, I've gone up. I've had the blessing of going on Table Mountain a few times, going up the cable car, and being able to just look around the panoramic view and just see all the different towns and the distant mountains, and just to see the coastline. And it's absolutely beautiful there. And there's tons and tons of guys kite surfing down there as well. There's a massive following. The waters are a little bit chilly, but if you've got a wetsuit, it's all good.
Yeah, but actually on Tabletop Mountain, there's a beach up on top there as well, um, which seemed to me like the coolest thing in the world to have a beach on the top of a mountain. Um,
Yeah, I don't think I've seen
uh,
that. I've seen it on the side of the mountain. There's Camps Bay and things like that, but I wouldn't say on top of the mountain. That's probably a little bit challenging, a little
I'll
bit
send it to
challenging to get
you.
to.
I'll send it to you
Okay.
after. Anybody I meet from Cape Town, I'm like, do you know what I'm talking about? And they're like, no. And I send them this
Nope.
video, and they're all like, their mouths drop open.
I
Um,
think what it might be as you're driving up, like snaking up the mountain. There's a drive called Camps. I think it's Camps Way, and you're snaking along like literally the edge of the mountain, and there are some beaches like far down below. It's probably quite a challenge to get to them.
yeah, I don't even know. But it looks really cool. I have a vlog myself, so any travel, any adventure, anything with water, that's kind of where my soul navigates to. Uh,
Well, and I think that's so important. It's about finding a place for yourself that you can kind of, reconnect or abundant that you are, and being out in the ocean, just floating there on your little board. Like you have to have so much faith just going with it and just, just taking it wave by wave and just realizing that there's all this energy and all that power and like that is like so important in our lives. And for some people, they go to the wilderness. Some people climb mountains, and other people go to the beach. And it's just for me, it's just a reminder to always try to connect with something that's bigger than you. It kind of just makes you feel small. Like, hey, I'm just like a little grain of sand on this beach, and it's not to say that you're not me. You don't that there's no value. Of course, there's value, but just to remember that you are part of something greater, and that can help like refuel you in like when you're going through those times of adversity of like, wow, this isn't going too good, and it's just like, okay, well maybe you've just been separated out of where you need to be to, and it's kind of like that analogy of where like when your own like inner fire is like not burning as hot and it's kind of going out, then it's like, well, just go back into the fire, get refueled, and that's where the power of having a community comes into it, and buddies and friends, that especially buddies and friends who have gone through what you're busy going through, like they can help inspire you again, give you life again, just refuel you. And like definitely what you just said, going back to nature, just reconnecting to a source, it's powerful. And that's why so many people also have the habit of meditation, just, being quiet, being still, and just remembering that, there's so much more outside of us, and a lot of the times we're so conflicted with our inner worlds, and we forget that there's so much out there that can help support us. And yeah.
yeah, that's for sure. I was actually somewhere for the weekend, and we were about to eat, and there was the wife was putting together all the food and getting ready in the house, and I just sat outside at the table and I just looked at the fruit trees, listened to the noises, and like this was 20-25 minutes, and she came outside finally and she was like, I'm just so impressed, like you can just sit, because not really many people can just sit there and be like that. um and it was, it's one of those things I've always been able to do, just sit and get lost in my thoughts, for better or for worse. But I joked with her. I used to have a dating profile online, and my name was Always Thinking, and that's never stopped. I had a boss once that was always like, everybody thought he was so serious all the time, and I was like, no, he's not. He's not always serious. He's just always got a thought in his head, and he's focusing. He's not like disconnecting from the world. He's actually in a whole world trying to figure out the world around him. But every once in a while, he come out with like a joke, and I was like the only person that understood him completely, because I've always been like lost in thought, and I'll just be in like thinking over things and whatever, and observing the world around me, and thinking, and I'll come out with like a funny line, and to me it made the most complete sense.
Yeah, and I can definitely understand what you're saying. Just being able to kind of like think deeper, and you kind of really just taking appreciation of a lot of the things that people don't like appreciate. And yeah, there's just there's so much beauty in like the mundane thing. And when you kind of just remember that, hey, we don't actually have a lot of time left, and it's just reflecting on memento mori, just remembering, death is upon us. And it can get morbid, but it helps you, reflect and really like, oh wow, it's a beautiful day outside. Wow, look at that bird. Everything, just you can marvel in those small things. And yeah, I've been awoken to that definitely a lot more in the last few years.
Yeah, and some people are, some people fear death. Some people, when something bad happens, they think you know, it's the end of everything. And we're here for such a short amount of time, but to a person, it's actually a very long amount of time. If you think about it. So, like, people that, their relationships are rocky or whatever it is, if you have to invest 5 years of therapy for it actually work it out to have 40 years of a good life that doesn't have to impact your children, is something that I think too many people don't consider, because right now they're not happy, or right now they don't know what they want. And it's one of those things where you wish, or I wish, that people would have more perspective. The world has become a world of YOLO. You only live once, and live for you, and whoever falls off in scraps, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, because I'm what matters, not the other people in my life. If I I only have one life, so I'm going to make it the best for me. And
True,
that,
true,
to
true.
me, that life is about what you do for others, not what you're doing for yourself,
Mm.
only yourself. That's otherwise it would just be you in this world, and there would be nobody else around.
Well, I think it also comes down. Well, I think what you're saying is kind of like, where is your joy coming from? Is it more from like the pleasures of, getting what you can in the world? For example, do I need to get the fast car? Do I need to get the big house? Do I need to have the flashy cell phone? And it's does your joy come from someplace else, like, helping others and giving service? And it's kind of, I think, moving from that, mindset of, you know, pleasure focus versus getting pleasure from helping others. It's just like a mind shift difference, and I can definitely relate to just really kind of like that was my mindset. Like I wanted all those things, and when you don't get those things, and that's when you start to shame yourself. I'm not getting it. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. Start to compare yourself with your friends, and then you start to get envious of your friends as well. I could definitely relate again, where I would go and visit a friend's house, and they did the exact same degree as me. It's like, why is my friend so much more successful than me? Wow, even then, it's like he has those things, and like how? Like I was just trying to like balancing it out, but it's like it didn't make sense, and I was very very egotistical, and I was envious, and those types of things just they don't help foster a good relationship. It just kind of pushes you away. And yeah, I ended up losing really, really good that way. And yeah, only later do you realize, well, actually, those things aren't important. What's important is getting to have the opportunity to sit knee to knee to someone like that, and find out how they're doing, and actually like relate to them on a deep level. It's like it's not about what they've got. It's not about what you have. Connect to the person at a core level. Like, how can you truly help each other? Like, that's what matters. Having fun that way together. That's where it really is all. Where it all is. And like that's what you'll go back to and remember. Like, wow, we had such deep discussions. Like that's where games for 10 hours. Like you would remember the deep discussion a lot more, I guess.
Yeah, I actually saw an interview with Dana White, uh, the
Mm.
the guy who created
UFC.
UFC,
Yeah.
and with Pierce Morgan, and he just kept coming back to, like, he had like a really bad relationship with his parents, and he he kept coming back to, all this money is fine, it's whatever, and I'm trying to build this dream, and then, but at the end of the day, if my kids don't say they had the best father in the world, then none of it was worth it.
You said a great quote. You talked about, my legacy to me is when I drop dead and my kids are at my funeral. I want my 3 kids to get up and say, he's an awesome dad. Is that ultimately, in the end, the real litmus test of success for you? I've seen other people say, actually, if in the end your kids, when they get old enough to make that decision for themselves, if they still want to be around you and they still love you and they still care about you and they would speak at your funeral in a positive way about you, then in the end, that's the ultimate litmus test of success, far more than any financial benefits or gains or fights or whatever it may be.
Well said. I couldn't have said that better myself. You're absolutely right. Everybody's always asking about legacy, your legacy. What you did for a living isn't your legacy. Your legacy is your children and their children and how they feel about you, how they feel about. Listen, we all make mistakes and we all fail in life at many different things. My opinion is the one thing that you can't fail is being a parent. It's the ultimate failure. It's what showed that you really weren't focused on the right things in your life if that's what you failed at.
And that was that's perspective. If he seems sincere in it, but I totally get it. All of the things he's somebody said that his like budget on shoes alone is like $100,000 a year on just sneakers. And I saw like an office tour of his office, and just the sneakers in his office alone were crazy. But he's like, yeah, I don't even know. I just, I want a pair of shoes. I go get them. But like, if my kids, my kids don't think I'm the coolest father or won't talk to me, then it was all for nothing. Because that he grew up that way. He didn't have a relationship with his parents. But there was an incident, I don't know, probably 6 months ago, where him and his wife were at a game, and they were both drunk, and it got a little violent between them. And he said, like, we don't care what any of the press says. We don't care what anybody else says. We're going home with our children, and we're going to go talk this out, because that's all that matters. We're not breaking that relationship. And he said, it took a lot of time, but that, they were able to get through it. Because if you don't have the family, you don't have the support, it's just not, you need something to live for. And, you can keep trying to get the money, trying to get the cars, trying to get all of that, but it's never going to be enough, because it's not going to fill that piece.
Yeah, I can definitely understand. I can definitely relate to that. I was trying to see whether I could help this guy, and this guy had extremely audacious goals. He said that he wanted to be one of the best salesmen in the world. He wanted to help sell over $1 billion, like a billion with a B, of this product. And I was like, wow, like that's a crazy audacious goal. And I was trying to find out like what was like the core motivation for getting it. You just want like the status, like what is it? And he's like, no, well, I want to have a level of certainty that my family will always be cared for. Like he was able to say, I'm going to get that goal because I want to have the confidence when I'm on my deathbed that I gave them everything. I want to leave them such a legacy that like they'll be able to go and do what they truly enjoy and not have to be have to go to work. They'll be able to do what they want to, creatively, instead of being kind of like trapped. And a lot of us kind of feel trapped in the 8 till 5, having to work to provide a family, and it's difficult. It really is.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Although I don't know, I have a different relationship with money, which is I've been working since I'm 8. So I've always been able to make money and find my way. So I'm not worried about making money. I work in a high tech company. So the sales team and anybody related to sales has that, which is I'm going to just grab as much as I can and help as many people as I can with our product. But I'm going to be the highest selling, whatever it is. And I just like helping people. So if I get paid while helping people, that's the best situation for me. But that money drive to get as much as possible, I don't have. Although after the divorce, I guess I changed the mindset a bit that, now my goal is enough passive streams that I'm good and my family will be good, but not to like the $1 billion level. I don't know if I don't know if I can even get my mind to even think about what that would mean. That's not how I'm wired.
One of the quotes I love from Jim Rohn, he said where he was speaking to his mentor, and his mentor gave him the challenge to become a millionaire. And he says, well, it's not just to get the $1 million, but it's to become what it takes to make that. So it's like, don't get the $1 million just to get the $1 million. Become the million. You get the $1 million because what it'll make of you to earn it. And I couldn't help but think of that when I was speaking to this guy that wanted to sell $1 billion. Like, wow, what will it make of you to what will you have to be in order to earn that type of thing? And I was just like, this blew my mind. And yeah, it was inspiring because I had to kind of make a similar trade-off back in my life a few years ago, where my daughter was just born, and my son was, I think, 4 or 5 at the time, and I was working really, really hard. I was working long hours, and when my daughter was born, I realized, well, sheesh, I didn't actually get to see, a lot of my son growing up. I missed so many of those early years. I was, leaving for work at 7 o'clock, getting back, 7 at night. I was, son was asleep. Like, I'd missed so much of that. And I was like, I can't do that again. Like, I know I could go back and work, and I can become a millionaire, but like, I'm not going to sacrifice that. Like, what's more important for me is to see them growing up, being hands on. And like, I just said, like, I can't do it. And, I resigned. I started my own business literally like 2 months after my daughter was born, and yeah, it's been an up and down journey. But it's about having the mindset of like, I want to be there for them. Like, I want to see that, I want to walk that path with them. And yeah, I think at the time I also realized that it was quite a rocky road in the relationship, and things were getting quite challenging. So I really wanted to give them as much time as possible.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, I guess I took advantage of Corona because I got divorced like the day before the first lockdown in my country. And so I took advantage to, the work from home jobs, because before that, I'm always involved in tech, but I had to commute. And when in the early years of the marriage, I was commuting 3 hours a day back and forth, like in total. And so I was, a weekend dad, and it sucked because all I wanted to do, since I was a little kid, was be a dad, but I was just commuting all the time. And then I get home and I just be like, I would sleep on the way back. And I actually remember one dinner, we were sitting down for dinner, and it was a Friday. So Friday I got out a little early, and we had guests over, and like 6 o'clock came or whatever it was, and I just like fell asleep at the table. And it didn't, my ex was like shocked, but like the next day I realized that was the time that I would take the train home, and that was my nap time. And so like it made total sense, but like I remember how much I was just totally wasted, and just the energy level. So I took advantage of Corona, and took my time to find the right job where I would be able to be there for the kids. So now I work from a home office and don't have to worry about anything. I can take them to school in the morning. I can pick them up in the afternoon. And it's been a world of difference for me just to be able to be there and recalibrate how that all works. And after divorce, I think a lot of men have to decide, how am I going to make this new life work, right? Because you used to have a teammate who would have made dinners or would have gotten the kids to school, or you had one role or several roles, but now you need to do all the roles. So do you have that kind of situation as well?
That's really interesting what you said about Corona. I can definitely relate to that. Where literally, I think it was a week before the lockdown hit, I had served the summons on my ex to file for divorce, and that was literally a week before the lockdown. So now I'm sitting at lockdown, and I've got 2 kids. Summons has been served, and it's it's exactly that. It's like, wow, okay, now what? You've got 2 kids. Just having so much responsibility, and especially they're young kids. My daughter was 1, my son was 5, and it was a little bit of It's a little bit of a nasty situation at the time. During lockdown, I was renting out my house, trying to get some income from there because things weren't looking too good. And I was staying in the same property that I was renting, but my tenants weren't paying my rent. They were like, we just not going to pay you.
Oh,
Things aren't
wow.
good there. And this was right before lockdown hit. And literally in the month prior to lockdown, I was trying to get them evicted, but because the lockdown hit, you couldn't get them evicted. So for the next 8 months, we still couldn't get them evicted. So it's like, oh my word, going through that was quite a toss up. So I ended up staying in this very small room with my two kids, and it's just like, sheesh, how do I balance all this? I still have to hustle as much as I can. It wasn't like, no, this is like actually the process you have to follow. Yeah, I could definitely relate to that.
So, okay, so you've got a really interesting background with your electronics. Can you explain kind of what that is? My little brother was doing, I want to say like security for microchips. Um, and that's what he did his like PhD in, and he's super nerd. Um, but that's where he was doing, I'm pretty sure he did his PhD working on security, taking microchips from China and analyzing them and finding the there was a big scandal about a whole bunch of mic processors or whatever came from China and they had spyware on it. So he was very involved in that. So I know your website is very engineering focused. So can you explain a little bit about what you do and how you got into that?
Sure. So my background is I'm an electronic engineer. So I went to varsity, studied electronic engineering, and the first job I went to go work, I was working on an intercom system, and I was basically employed as a development embedded engineer. And what that means is that I had to have full knowledge of all the electronics in the system. So it had to have its own microphone. It had its own, network bus and things like that. It was speaking with other vehicles, but basically, I had to have full knowledge of all the electronics in terms of what were the capabilities, what could it do, as well as I had to be able to program and write the software for that system. So that's what embedded development means. It means that you're writing software for a electronic system. It's not like writing a web page. It's you're controlling a piece of hardware, and that's where I say that I kind of had to understand the systems from the inside out. So, for example, if I wanted a device to do a certain thing, I had to look from the outside in, and then I had to say, okay, well, based on what peripherals I have, what functionality there is, I had to put all of that in there. And yeah, I really started to reflect like deeply just on that understanding where when I got like separated and when I was going through my own like internal trauma of like, wow, there's so much of my own inside, my own inner world that I'm not really like understanding, and I just couldn't help but relate it to, well, I'm programming these embedded systems. I'm putting so much effort into a world that no one sees. Like I'm putting the ones and zeros, the bits. No one ever sees that work that I'm doing. And if I do that work properly and neatly, like wow, maybe the outcome will be different. But if I do my work there sloppily and I leave lots and lots of bugs, and that's going to affect the output. And then I couldn't help but relate to, well, if you've got something, like a deep trauma sitting in the back of your mind, that's kind of like a software bug sitting in a program that it's affecting you. And when the environment is right, like whoop, that bug pops up again, and now suddenly you react, you get angry, you break something because it's like, wow, that thing in the back of your mind just triggered it. And it's just like, sheesh, I had those own moments of like, I would get angry, I would break things. It's just like, why am I doing this? I'd go back and try and reflect and like, what led to that? I couldn't help but marry the two. I've gone through my professional career as this embedded engineer developing electronic products. It's just like, well, there's so much of my own inner world I don't understand. And then, I started to read the books on psychology and relationships and things like that, just to try and like understand more. Like it's kind of like that other saying, like know thyself. Like that is the secret. Like he who conquers himself is mighty, not he who conquers nations. You can conquer your own mind. Like wow, what power to you. I was just like, I went down that development journey.
But yeah, so it's really interesting. My father's actually an electrical engineer.
Awesome.
And I actually had him on the podcast because my parents are also divorced. So you might actually enjoy that episode. It gets into his strange professional career. with submarines and other things. But growing up, I grew up with my mother, and my brain was like one way. And then when I got to college, in my mind, like my electrical engineer brain turned on, where I kind of people would come to me. I was always like the tech guy for help. But in college, I realized that basically 90% of things that people bring to me, I can figure it out, and they're not too complicated. And there's a line of people putting them together, so there shouldn't be so hard to take it apart and figure out what's going on and put it back together. And that analytical brain of, bring me something, I'll figure it out. And then I also applied it to like friends that would come to me with problems and things like that, where I have a mind that basically sees all the pieces, which could be kind of what you're explaining, where I can see all the pieces from all the different places. One of my jobs, they called me Yoda because I had all the answers. I had some customers call me Encyclopedia Ben because they would ask me any question and I would be able to spit it out. So I can see all the pieces, all the parts, all the, some people are very focused and this their marketing, their sales. So I can see what everybody else is doing and kind of pull from here, pull a piece from there, put it all together and say, we should do it this way. So I also have that engineering brain from my father, but I didn't have it until I was like 18 or 19. That part of my brain just didn't exist. But there was a complete shift at that point. But it also helped with my relationship with my father, because before then, like I don't know, I didn't get him, or he was just a big nerdy giant in my mind that we had nothing really to talk about. But then once I got into, also like my father he sold computers, and I never had a computer till I was probably 16 or 17. So, it's like the shoemaker's, the shoemaker's son doesn't have any shoes. So I was late to the game, but once I hit the game, I was off running. Once I got married, I was looking I had my own business with doing web design, but I was asked to get a real job, and I interviewed at like some of these IT places, and they're like, so what certifications do you have? What is this? And I was like, well, my father's an electrical engineer that went to Cooper Union, which is like one of the top engineering schools in the States. And I'm just, everybody asked me for help and I help them. So teach me, I'm a sponge. And they're like, sorry, we need a certification. We need this. And I was like, you just don't get me, So, thankfully I've gone from, job to job, and now I've landed somewhere that's a really good fit. But along the way, I'm all self-taught, and all the things that I've learned have built on each other. We had one office that we were in, and then we moved like a shared office space, and then we got our own office. And I was like laying I was building Ethernet cables from scratch instead of like people. They're like, yeah, here's the diagram, here's the tool, go for it. So like I laid cables after cable after cable. To me, the world is just one big learning school, as opposed to, these kids now that go to school and they're there, 2-3 days a week, and that's it for a few hours. And the rest of the time they're out partying. That was never me. Again, my brain doesn't turn off. And to me, that made no sense. But what kind of books did you lean into for that introspective part of your experience?
I kind of just stumbled on it by accident. So I was browsing the net one day, and then I stumbled onto that old man Jim Rohn. And Jim Rohn, there was an old, I think 1971 seminar that I stumbled on, and it just like really hit me. He gave a presentation about kind of like the day that turns your life around. And like for him, it was a moment where, someone knocked on his door and they were trying to sell him Girl Scout cookies, and like he didn't have any money, and like he ended up lying to these Girl Scouts, and it's just like really, really funny story. But he just really just says that, there's a day in your life where it kind of just turns around and you realize, well, if you want to be different, you have to start to change. You have to be the change. And he kind of got me down the road of self-help and development. And I really went down a rabbit hole of, buying as many books as I could, and just trying to, I went down the self-help hell journey, you could call it. And reading lots of books, and just trying to, again, learn and understand myself better. And just trying to I really wanted to kind of tap into like the mentors and the father figures that were in the books. Like I don't really have a strong relationship with my dad. And whenever I would pick up a book and like, this author, this doctor, this professor was telling me these things, I was like, wow, like this guy's successful. Like he understands how the world works. Like, let me listen to this guy. And like, I ended up kind of getting like father figures and granddads through all the books that I was reading. Like I was growing my own little community. Like they were all supporting me. And I found so much value there. Like I'm constantly reading now. And it also ties into a little bit of what you said earlier in terms of, if you want to get help, you really need to tap into the community aspect of things. Like don't try to do things yourself. Like there are shortcuts, but there's shortcuts if you use a community that knows the way. When you're kind of winging it yourself, then that's when you kind of, get stuck. And that's where the benefit of having, a coach really, really helps as well. Someone who's especially walked the path before, that could say, okay, well, you're at this start of your journey. If you want to get there, start doing these things. And I really wish back in the day when things had just happened for me, that I had the mindset of, well, okay, let me just reach out and ask for help. I was very, I don't know what the word is. I don't know if it is egotistical, maybe afraid, but kind of to, be a man and ask for help. I think the typical, I'm a man mindset is like, oh, I don't need the GPS. I'll just follow my own rules and do it my own way.
Yeah, I mean, it's. Did you have any friends that were divorced to lean on?
I didn't. At the time, my friends at the time were all married, but I remember a specific. Basically, after my separation, pretty much all the friends that we had gathered through the marriage, they kind of sided with my then wife. And I kind of felt myself being completely alone, having no friends, having no support system, and literally feeling completely like abandoned. Like I felt like there was no one I could go to ask for help. And it was only in a few months later did I just one day think, well, let me just walk into a church and see what this whole thing is about. And that kind of also got me really like hooked to that journey of, wow, there's so much of the spiritual domain that I had no idea about that is actually really significant and important. Like I don't know how true the words are, but I'm going to go and listen. And slowly over time, things just really did impact me on a deep level. That really did help my recovery as well. But most certainly in the early days, I didn't have lots and lots of friends I could kind of lean on who had gone through it.
Wow. And so your daughter was one, and you made a conscious decision to be there for her. How was that different for you raising when your son was being raised?
Around the same time, I also stumbled on some self-help, and one of the guys who was speaking was saying that there came a moment for him where he realized, well, if he wanted to walk his daughter down the aisle one day, that he was going to have to make some massive changes. Like he was going to have to change himself physically. At the time of my separation, I was extremely unfit. I was overweight. Things were just really, really bad. But there just came a point where I realized I had to do a lot of self-work if I really wanted to be the foundation for them. And that's what it kind of comes back to. If you want to be that rock for them, you have to be strong enough. You have to be a strong enough rock. Do the hard work. Ask those difficult questions. And it kind of goes back to what you said of me realizing that, well, my son not being able to spend those early years with him, I had to also kind of judge my decisions with that in mind.
Right. And so how did you, I guess, you know, I think a lot of middle-aged, or I don't know, whatever you want to call 40-year-old men find themselves not as fit as they were, in their 20s. How did you find that journey? That's a whole life-changing thing in itself. How did you go about that? Because you look great now.
Thank you. For me, in that lonely dark place, I was looking down. I don't know what it is in pounds, but I was weighing around, I think it was around 95 kgs. I was, yeah, okay, I'll come and see what it's all about. And I went to my first park run, and wow, it was crazy. I walked most of it, but I ended up finishing it. And what really floored me was just all the other people that were there doing the same 5 kilometer park run. And it's like, well, I'm not in the best of shape, but I'm running this race with, 18-year-olds, with 7-year-olds, with 60-year-olds. The 60-year-old lapped me, like so many times. And it's just like, I had that kind of that mindset of knowing that, well, things are going to be okay. You can run the race as fast as you can, and there'll be that support network behind you. And just over time, I really became hooked to going to do these runs. And okay, well, if I want to do my next run on Saturday a little bit faster, maybe that means during the week I need to do a run midweek. And then slowly over time, I'd start to do more things. I'd start to run the treadmill, and I'd start to think, well, if I want to run better on Saturday, maybe I should start eating a little bit better. And then just everything started to fuel into that. And yeah, slowly but surely, well, I think it was between 3 and 4 months, I ended up losing 20 to 30 kilograms, just like
Wow.
that. Because I just put my mind into it, just driven into it, and it really shocked my colleagues when I went to work, like after the Christmas holidays. They were like, "Where's Carl gone? It's like he's missing half of him. Like, what happened here?" And yeah, just really I became a just I think feeling that rush of doing those runs and cycling and just getting out there. And I think a lot of it was just, as I said in the beginning, just connecting to that higher power, going doing the hikes, climbing the mountains, running along the beach, and just using that as like fuel for me. I was going through an internal conflict. Why was all this happening? But then I was just using those surroundings to help like fuel me, and at the same time I was starting to feel better, starting to feel more motivated. And yeah, just one thing led to another, and you kind of get on that road, that journey of like, wow, you can be so much better.
Yeah. Awesome. So now, you started this coaching, which I love the name Heroic Dad, because it takes a lot of, it shouldn't, but it does. As you said, it takes a lot for a father, a dad, a man to ask for help. And tell me a little bit about that process, why you started it, and what you really trying to do with it.
Okay. Have you read Warren Farrell's book and John Gray's book called The Boy Crisis at all?
No.
Okay, so they co-authored a book together called The Boy Crisis, and in there, it's just a really, really detailed account of how basically how separated homes, and especially fatherless homes, and homes with where dads aren't as present, how it really impacts homes. Inside his book, he basically says that a lot of the times there will be the heroic mindset of fathers. They'll go and and basically kill themselves at work. They'll spend as much time as they can at work to get as many dimes as they can to support their family. But then they're not spending a lot of time with the children. And he really expresses in his books that children want more of your time versus more of your dime. As you can see, my daughter's hollering at me. They just want that connection. And where that word hero, where I really kind of like caught onto it is, I in my self-help journey, I stumbled on this other self-help development platform called Heroic. And they've got basically a coaching program that their mission is to help try to get people to the steps. What are the principles? How can you get over this? And that's where I kind of grabbed the word heroic, was basically stealing it from that. But yeah, just how can we help support dads to bring them to their heroic levels, to truly be that rock for their family. And if you go back to the word parent, what it actually means, it means to bring forth. That's what the word means, like etymologically. So like, how can I go back as a parent? How can I make myself the best I can be to bring my children forth to the best they can be? And like, that's what I think a hero needs to be. Like a hero needs to be a protector to help make that flourish. That's what it's about.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I didn't realize until after the divorce how many people have bad parents and parents that they just beat them up all the time with their words, just unsupportive, or you always do this, or how can you do that, or don't even try that, or worse. And I never realized it because I grew up, my father wasn't around, but like I would see him once a month, but I would call him and ask him, hey, can you buy me this, or can you pay for this? And it was always no. Without a doubt, the first thing was no. And it would take me, a lot of time to maybe get him to say yes. And my mother raised me, but she didn't have any money, but she let me do whatever I wanted, or find the money to help me do whatever I wanted. So like there's to me, there's like searchers and followers, and I was 100% a searcher. So like I did acting classes, I did bike racing, I would leave the house in the morning and go play football or whatever, and I'd come back at the end of the day. Like I was on my own, figuring my own stuff out, and she gave me the space to do that. And I realized after the divorce, after talking to people, that like that's not what all parents were like. And even though to me it was very eye-opening. And I always say, like, Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, like, to me, he is just, the reason why he's so successful is he's just that supportive parent that no one ever had. Because he's like, hey, surround yourself with positive people. If your family isn't positive, back away. Like simple things that like make total sense. Like I've always, I left the house and I moved out in ninth grade, but I always found people and friends and like, I don't know, parental figures wherever I went. And I would get the most. I switched schools a lot, but not because I was in trouble or not because I got kicked out. Either they closed or I got as much out of the school as I can. And I knew I needed to move on, because standing still is like the worst feeling for me. I'm always trying to move forward. And if I'm stuck in a spot, it's like death to me. So, I learned very quickly that just because you're put in a situation that has nothing to do with what's possible. And a lot of people are like, they live for whatever their parents want them to do. Like I heard somebody this weekend, like, I became an accountant because that's what my father wanted me to be. And I was just listening and I'm like, what? How do you do that? That's like a total foreign concept to me. To the point where my father at some point said to me, like, this is something else that I can blame your mother for, whatever it was. And I was like, me. I'm not going to just sit around and, do whatever you tell me. I'm going to do whatever I think is right. And I'm on my own path and no one's going to take me off of it. So, it was just shocking. It's shocking to me. It's still shocking to me because I have friends that like send me things that their parents send them. And I want to cry. Like, I just want to, like, some of them are thousands of miles away and I just want to like go and give them a hug, because I can't, it's such a foreign concept to me that it hurts, because I don't even know. I don't know what I would do in that situation. I thought it was bad that my father always said no, but like but I knew, like, if I called him, he would answer the phone. But people don't even have that, Um, and so this coaching, or being able to be that positive force in someone's life, and somebody realizing that they didn't have it, is so important to recovery, or to rebuilding, or to hitting 110%. Because if you're always doing what other people are telling you and believing what they're saying about you, you're not going to get above 60 because you don't think you can.
No, you've just hit the nail on the head, and it goes back to having that supportive relationship. And one of the key relationships is a father-child relationship, and I realized how much of that I didn't have, especially when I went through the hard times. Like, why can't I call my dad and like chat about these things? This is like, I realized I didn't have that support network. And very early on, after I had my children, I made the decision, like, I'm not going to be anything like my dad. Like, I'm going to be 100% there for my kids all the time. A completely, like, the polar opposite. Like, my dad is a crazy workaholic. He's been working forever. And I just said, well, I'm not going to make that same sacrifice. I want to give them as much as I can. I'm going to give them that support network. Even if it means not having the security and the stability of having, a full-time job. And just recently, I had to make that same decision where I was offered an amazing embedded development job, like literally working on artificial intelligence, like amazing front edge cutting stuff. And they said, here's an amazing package, but you need to be full time. You have to be here, every day. You don't even have to be here the whole time every day. Just be here a couple times a week. And I was like, I couldn't make that decision. I couldn't say yes to that because I know that it would be taking so much away from my clients, the dads I wanted to help, and especially like my kids. It's just like, I said no to that security and said, well, I'd rather step into the uncertainty and the pain of not having the security, and let me help the people where I can in the best way I can, versus just sitting behind a desk getting my salary. That's it. And yeah, it's not an easy decision. And yeah, I had to ask what was more important in the end of the day. When I was sitting on my deathbed when I'm 91, which would have given me more happiness, more time with my children, actually helping dads through their journey, or just getting $1 million in the bank and giving that to my kids anyway? Like, what is the point? Like, I just it's a, that was basically my mindset.
So after the divorce, did your relationship with your son change? Because, you didn't have such a strong, all the time, him first relationship before, but now, since the separation, has that changed?
I think it's certainly improved because now there's definite boundaries. So, for example, we only have the children 1 week at a time. So during that week that I'm with my children, am I going to give them my everything, or am I just going to not? Like, I had to make that same decision. So now, having made the decision of like, well, the dad all in, it's everything's for them. Like, I think they've definitely felt that. Well, dad's here. Like, dad's doing what he said he would do. He's going to be that rock. I can ask dad for help. We can go out and play. We can have fun. We can catch tadpoles. We can go for a hike. Dad's there. And I really want to build up that connection to the point of, when he starts to go through puberty and the teenage years, that like he can come back and ask for me, especially during those years when they want to rebel as much as they can, and like, trying to prove their own, worth in the world. And that's where I'm going to see how it is. But just to really just have that, dad as a support network for me.
Nice. And, this is the Too Dad to Quit podcast. So we do want all of our guests to share a Too Dad to Quit moment, a moment where you think about your kids and, you just brings a smile to your face. And when people ask you how the kids are doing, maybe this is the stories you share. So if you can share your Too Dad to Quit moment, that would be amazing.
Okay, well, I think there's probably going to be a bad moment and and a good moment. I think the bad moment for me is kind of sitting in that place of despair, sitting in that tiny room, two kids. President has just announced the lockdown. I'm looming in debt. I'm probably feeling like a level 3 person out of 10 trying to deal with level 4 problems. It feels like the world is ending, and I just like, I had to go back and reflect and say, well, what is truly important when I am sitting on that deathbed? What would I have wanted to achieve? And I want to be able to say, well, I gave them the best that I can there, and I want to be able to say that they've grown into their own heroic parents, and just one day having the opportunity and blessing to get grandkids and things like that, and to walk my daughter down the aisle. Just those key moments is what was really my turnaround. Like I've got to step up my dad game to be there, be the rock for them, to help them. And it's been really amazing in terms of like how the relationships even with their friends has been impactful, because like even their friends know, well, she's Carl's dad's there, like he's a support network. So whenever I go pick up little my kids from school, like I get hugs from the kids around, and it's just being present, just being there, being for them.
So I know exactly what you mean. My daughter, shortly after the divorce, I was doing pickups, which I never did before because I was always working. And she said to me, "Abba, you're their dad, because anytime I pick up the phone and I call you, you're there, and not everybody has a their dad." So I know exactly what you're talking about. And the last thing we like to leave our listeners with is some advice that you would give to any dad, couple, whatever, that's thinking about divorce, going through divorce, after divorce, something that maybe you learned along the way, some advice tips you would give.
Sure. Well, to any dads out there, to anyone going through a separation or divorce, just know that this valley of your life is, it's just a low point, and there is definitely a second mountain, which David Brooks speaks about in his book, The Second Mountain. And there's a lot more joy, coming for you on that other side. And this is it's going to be a low point. There's going to be a lot of conflict. There's going to be a lot of labels thrown around. You might you might be subject to a lot of things that you really don't want to be subject to. But what you can do is you can use those to help make you an even stronger person. You can kind of develop what they call as the anti-fragile mindset. You can use those periods of adversity, of the things no one wants to go through, but you can help make you a better person. And you can keep growing and keep developing. You can spiral upwards and become an even better version of yourself.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So Kyle,
this isn't the end. This is the beginning.
Yeah. Kyle, thank you so much for reaching out, and this has been great. And I'll make sure to include all of your links and everything in the description so everyone can get in touch with you. Even if it's inspiring some guy to start running, I think you are a ball of enthusiasm. And for all of our listeners, this has been the Too Dad to Quit podcast, and we'll see you next week.
This podcast provides a platform for our guests to express their own personal views and opinions. Some or all of these views and opinions may not be shared by Ben and or Yoel.
Thank you for listening to the Too Dad to Quit podcast. Available at toodadtoquit.com. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.